make the difficult transition from an 1885 gentleman to a 2018 guy, but it was often a battle for him to let go of his old ways and his more formal style of speech, which that Eve's friends and parents thought archaic and a little humorous. In many ways, Patrick admired New Yorkers in 1885 for their formalities, courtesies, and mode of dress. They were less vulgar, at least on the surface, and the manners of his time far surpassed the near lack of manners of 2018. To Patrick, it seemed that everyone had a chip on their shoulder and was ready to lash out at anybody who didn't agree with their beliefs, no matter what they were. Sometimes Eve would say, "Patrick, you have to live the time you're in. You can't be an 1885 man living in 2018. It will pull you apart." And she was right. Patrick knew that, and he also knew that he loved Eve with all his being, in any time or place. She was his pulsating heart, his wife and tender lover, his best friend, who had saved his life. Her time travel back to 1885, their meeting then, and their time travel together back to 2016 were the best things that had ever happened to him, and he wouldn't let anything get in the way of that. But that afternoon, while Patrick had searched for Gantly's, he'd clicked on a link that landed him on a page he'd never seen before and could have never anticipated. As he nosed closer to the screen, eyes widening, reading the article and studying the grainy black and white photo of the young woman looking back at him, he was shaken to the core. He began to tremble, and sweat beads popped out on his forehead. It was unbelievable. Impossible. How could it have happened? The more he read, the more he knew it was not impossible. The more he realized without a doubt that what the article said was, in fact, the truth. The whole painful, shocking, and devastating truth. It was an earthquake that shook down inner towers and crumbled the walls of past and present. It was a catastrophe. What had he done? While waiting for Eve to return home, Patrick had paced the apartment and then taken Georgie Boy, their half-beagle, half-Springer Spaniel, for a walk in Riverside Park, hoping a change of scenery would help him untangle his gnarled thoughts. But as soon as Eve had opened the door, she'd noticed his troubled expression. She'd knelt to rub Georgie Boy's ears, allowing him to lap at her cheek, all the while gathering herself, finally glancing up at Patrick and asking him what had happened. Still shaken, he'd asked her to go into the kitchen and read the article he'd pulled up on the laptop. She'd done so, hesitating before she eased down onto the kitchen stool, her eyes reluctantly lowering as she began to read. Minutes later, she was still, her face slowly drained of color. The words came alive, and they had a terrible and immediate impact. The article was an old one. It was an interview of an actress, dancer, and singer who had performed in the first Ziegfeld Follies back in 1907. The article held a secret about Patrick that would utterly change their lives, and Patrick wondered if their marriage would survive it. The Theater Magazine, December 27, 1914. Naughty Parts in Naughty Plays. Remembering Maggie Lott Gantly. Some women are born to it, some can achieve it, but it is never acquired by practice or through tireless publicity. It is that ineffable something that cannot be defined by words, cannot be touched, and, once held, can never be lost. Of course, I am referring to the innocent magnetism of Maggie Lott Gantly, the original naughty girl. In Ms. Gantly's most famous role as Henrietta in The Silk Lady, she is frivolous, discreet, conventional, and very smart, even if she is not always attracted to the right kind of man. This, of course, is what brought New York theater audiences to the theater time and time again, if Maggie Lott Gantly's name was on the marquee. Maggie Lott Gantly